See, I was born March 17th, 1934. My mother's family was I guess they fought on the white side against the communists, and my grandfather was in the White Army, and they all escaped through Siberia to Manchuria, China. And so that's how they got there. My father was a Marine, and his parents both came from Hungary, and they had 5 kids in New Jersey, and my father was the oldest kid. And in 1908, he was born in 1907, and he died, or I mean, the parents died of the big epidemic, flu epidemic in 1918. And they died within supposedly one day of one another. So both parents died. So my father was 11, and then they also had a baby, and the four oldest ones were taken up by friends and relatives, and the little baby was adopted formally by some family. So anyway, that's sort of the quick thing about my father. He, I guess he finished the 8th grade and then joined the Marines, and he got out of the Marines, I think, after 4 or 5 years. Couldn't find a job because it was about the time of the Depression, and so he joined the Marines again, and it started out from scratch all over. And so I guess at that point was when he was sent to Shanghai. Shanghai was sort of an international city that was run by Europeans and, Americans, Brits, French. There were some Italian troops, and they also had the Japanese troops there.
Wow.
And so the U.S. had a regiment of Marines. They were called the 4th Marines. And how my father and my mother met, I don't know. But anyway, I was born in 1934, and my father was sent back to the States in 1936 when I was 2.5 years old. And I didn't remember him. I mean, I occasionally would see a picture of him, but basically there was nothing of him in my memory. Let's see, now my mother's family, as I said, they were sort of on the white side. They lived close to the Ural Mountains, and after the communists had basically won the heartland of Russia, they took off through Siberia, and my grandfather was in the army fighting the communists, and so apparently by that time the Trans-Siberian Railroad was run by communists. And so when the soldiers were coming through, they would just wave them on, go on to Manchuria or somewhere. But my mother and her sister and her grandmother were also on a train, but that train was stopped by the guys, the communists. And so they were stopped somewhere in Siberia, and they lived there for, I don't remember how many, well, in fact, I never knew how many years. And eventually, I think there was something called, well, anyway, they kind of loosened things up, the communists did. And so they were able to get together with my grandfather in Manchuria. The city was Harbin. It was built by Russians, but it was obviously eventually ended up in China. So I'm not sure how long my mother lived there, but she got tired of my grandfather taking her money and her sister's money. They worked in the factory, and he would get drunk and so on, and my mother was kind of stubborn, so she left. Her sister stayed with the family. So she came to Shanghai, and I guess one of the jobs that I know about, she got to be a sort of a nanny for a British family. They had 2 boys. I don't know what the name of one of them was. The other one was called Kenneth, and he was a really nice guy. You know, listened to everybody. So she liked the name. So anyway, I don't know when my parents met, but I guess let's see, if I were born in 34, so somewhere around 34 or 33 they met and got married in a Russian church and had me, and my mother named me Kenneth, and because she liked that other kid that was nice. But the problem, and so I was baptized, I guess, a couple of months after I was born, and the rule in the Russian Orthodox Church is that you have to be named after some saint in the Russian Orthodox or Orthodox group of saints. So they just didn't have a Kenneth, and so they finally came up with the name of Innocenti, which is, I guess, a Greek kind of a name, but they had a couple of saints called Innocenti, and it means innocent. There were a lot of popes who were called innocent. So
that's interesting.
So it's Innocenti. So let's see. Anyway, my father left back for the States when I was about 2 and a half. It was 1936, and from then on, my mother and I were the only 2 people living. But in the meantime, my grandmother got tired of the grandfather, and so she asked to come and live with my mother. And my mother wasn't crazy about the idea, but she did it anyway. So the 3 of us ended up in Shanghai, living alone. And my father sent us money. I guess they called it an allotment, whatever, part of what he was making in the Marine Corps. And of course, life was kind of cheap in Shanghai at that point, and so we could get by on it. And he'd occasionally send a card or whatever. Then eventually the war broke out in Pearl Harbor happened in December of 1941. The Marines obviously knew about this. I'm sure Franklin Roosevelt must have known about it. So they shipped all of the 4th Marines to the Philippines. And they left like a month before Pearl Harbor. So they got out of there okay, but we were stuck in Shanghai. And I guess on Pearl Harbor Day, the Japanese moved in. They were sort of on the surrounding part of the city of Shanghai and took over the whole city of Shanghai. So we were under Japanese rule until Japan was defeated in 1945.